On this episode of Healthcare Heartbeat, a podcast produced by Avant Healthcare Professionals, we're talking all about the Visa Bulletin. Now, before you jump in, a couple quick things. First, we recorded this episode in August of 2024, so the dates you see are specific to that time period. But the instruction, the guidance, and the discussion around how to read the Visa Bulletin, they apply whenever. Now, the second thing is, if you are listening to this episode, I highly encourage you to check out the video version of this episode. It's up on YouTube, so please go and find us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, that'd be nice, but watch the video version of this episode because we walk you through the actual Visa Bulletin and it will help you so much more than if you're just listening to it because it can be kind of confusing.
You're listening to Healthcare Heartbeat, brought to you by Avant Healthcare Professionals.
Welcome to Healthcare Heartbeat, a podcast produced by Avant Healthcare Professionals. In this episode, very excited to be bringing to you an element of this process that we get so many questions about, both internally and from our healthcare professionals. It's the Visa Bulletin. And I am joined by Saloni Kaul, our Director of Immigration. Welcome.
Hi, Ross. Thank
Hi.
you for having me. It's good to see you all today and be here to talk to you about the Visa Bulletin. It is a hot topic, and we get lots of questions internally and externally. So hopefully we can give you a little more insight into the Bulletin and what we do here at Avant.
You are absolutely our subject matter expert on this. So when we kind of got the request to talk about this, I was like, I know exactly who to go to. We're going to Saloni. We're gonna pick her brain, and that's exactly what we're gonna do today. And I think the most natural place to start with this is, what's the Visa Bulletin?
So high level, the Visa Bulletin is something that's released by the Department of State each month. What it does is it gives us insight into who is eligible to come to the U.S. based on their priority date. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we go through the Visa Bulletin in detail. But what the Department of State does is it issues this Visa Bulletin every month. It's online, and it's typically in the second week, goes into the second week sometimes. And it gives us dates to give us insight into not only nurses, but across the board, all categories. So it's employment-based, it's family-based. Everyone is on those charts based on when they were filed, and that's what it shows us is who can come in. Now, the important thing to know is the fiscal year for the government starts on October 1st. So we get the new allocation of visas on October 1st of each year, and that's when the new bulletin is released, and then monthly we get the charts updated so we know who is able to move forward. Sometimes there's a pause, sometimes we go a little bit backwards. So it's kind of something we monitor internally very aggressively to keep up with giving updates to our nurses and also internally to other departments so they know who can move forward and who cannot right this second.
I think this is something really important for those of you that are either in this process or thinking about jumping into, you're a nurse and you want to work in the United States, understanding there are a lot of aspects of this process that a company can kind of control, right? Things that we can do our best to make sure that they move quickly with your assistance. It's a team effort. We've talked about this in previous episodes. It's a collaborative effort to make this process go smoothly. Visa Bulletin is one out of our control.
For the most part, yeah, it's not something that we can internally control. It's the government, right? So we do the best we can with moving our nurses through the process as quickly as we can. So what we can do internally is once you pass your NCLEX exam, we can move forward with filing your petition and securing those priority dates for you as quickly as possible. So you're a little bit further along in the queue when those dates move forward. But outside of that, outside of filing your petition and getting that priority date for you, we really do not have control on the actual movement of the bulletin. What we can help you with is direct you on what other steps you need to take to get as close to the finish line.
And I think that's something we've heard from our very own nurses that we have successfully brought into our program and then placed, in hospitals, healthcare facilities in the United States, is that they tell us how thankful they are that we're kind of with them at every step of the way. In immigration, this is a process that can take some time, and we're still there checking in throughout that process, right?
Correct. So I'm an immigrant, and I wish I had Avant many moons ago when I came here to help me and guide me through what the steps are, what the process is. It's very complex, not just from an immigration perspective, but also from taking the NCLEX exam or being clinically able to assimilate into the US healthcare hospitals, right? And be successful here, transition to a new country where everything's different. So we do help across the board through all aspects. There's also, our nurses have families, and we also help with their process. So it's not just the candidate, but we also help with the paperwork and the process for the families, eligible dependents, which is typically spouse and children. So we guide them through that. We help them transition to the US as well and provide them with information on jobs for their spouses or schools for their children. So it is really a comprehensive process that we have at Avant.
And I think it's important to remember too, because the time when you kind of start or even submit the paperwork, if you will, to the time when you get your interview, right? That there can be a significant amount of time between those two steps, and your life could very well change, right? And I think that's the other part of it, is that we're there to, discuss with you those life changes if they've occurred, and then how to navigate, right?
Correct. So typically the process currently where we are in the immigration landscape, it could take anywhere from 2 to 3 years in some instances. And in that time, as we all know, a lot can happen. You can have new additions to your family. You could start off as someone who is single and then in a couple of years decide to get married, or you have children. And there's a lot of changes that happen even with jobs. So you might want to change jobs and pursue opportunities in a different country as you wait for retrogression. So that is something we provide you feedback on, just so you can make an informed decision of what works for you with those timeframes of your American dream, as well as your personal life changes during that time.
Yeah, and I think that's just an important thing when you are looking at a partner for this entire process of coming from wherever you are to wanting to work in the United States, is having a partner that's there to really help to guide you through it. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to jump in and show you a visa bulletin, and we're going to walk you through it. Now, an important note here, we're only going to focus on what's called the EB3.
Correct.
Right?
So the visa bulletin has, like I said before, it has family-based, employment-based dates, and even with the employment-based, there are several categories. It goes from 1 through 5. There's additional categories that are applicable, but for the purposes of what we do at Avant, for registered nurses or healthcare professionals, we are mostly focused on the EB3 or the employment-based third category, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
So I think at least some of the principles of like how to read it are there, but we're really only going to focus, because this is as simple as this chart may look, which I guess you could argue it doesn't actually look that simple, but as simple as it looks, there's a lot there. So we could probably have to spend like 6 episodes if we were going to even attempt to cover it all. So we're just focusing on the EB3 category, because again, that's our bread and butter. That's what Avant Healthcare Professionals, that's what we focus on. And we really feel like this is going to be super helpful to you to understand the Visa Bulletin. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, that's what we're going to look at.
Sounds good.
This episode is all about the Visa Bulletin and immigration. That's just one step in the process of becoming a USRN. If you want to learn more about all the other steps in the process, particularly when you work with Avant Healthcare Professionals, check out our episode on the process. We go through every step in detail, along with super helpful tips that you need to know. We're back, and as promised, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a Visa Bulletin. You're going to walk us through it.
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure you are going to walk us through
absolutely.
it. That's why I got you here, because I can't help on this one. All right. Let's take a look at the Visa Bulletin. Now we're going to look at chart A first, which understandably that's usually the first one you see when you look at the Visa Bulletin. And it's on the US government site, More often than
Yes.
not, if you just do a quick search, it'll be the first
And
result.
we also have this on our website. So
That's
if
true.
you do want to take a look at the most recent visa bulletin, we're going to talk about August because we're in the month of August. If you do want to take a look at it, you can go onto our website and we have that posted there as well.
Yep, we'll put the link to that below in the comments. You can always get that. We put every month's up. Okay, so this is chart A, and as we mentioned in the first segment, we're only going to focus on what's called EB3, which is this third row here. So walk us through this, Saloni.
So like we talked about before, the visa bulletin has a lot of rows and columns and several tables. And what we do at Avant is specifically EB3, or the employment-based third category, for our healthcare professionals, mostly registered nurses. And what this shows us is the dates that are eligible for forward movement for our healthcare professionals to go to the interview, get a visa, and enter the US based on the country of their birth. So the way these are itemized is you have all chargeability, which is all countries across the globe except China, India, Mexico, and the Philippines. And what we are focused on first is rest of the world. So if your petition or your I-140 employment-based petition was filed prior to that date, so it would be November 30th of 2021 or prior, you are then eligible to go to the interview, get your visa, and enter the US. For different countries, it's different dates. The reason for this is there is a specific allocation of visas annually. So we talked about October 1st being the new fiscal year. So every year on October 1st, there's a new allocation of 140,000 visas that are issued for this category, and each country has their own bucket. And due to the demographics of China and India with their population and the demand for visas, those dates look different for them. So like you can see, the Philippines is the same. The Mexico as well is at December 1st of 2021. India has always been retrogressed. They go back to September 22nd of 2012, which means that if you are from India, if you were born in India, and if you want to come to the US, you would have to have your employment-based case filed prior to September 22nd of 2012. So you have about a 12 to 14 year wait if you are from India. China has progressed a little over the past several months, the past couple of years. They are at September 1st of 2020, but most of the other countries are kind of in the same spot. We did see these dates go back a little bit a couple of months ago. So we were current during the years of COVID. And that's one of the big questions we get from our nurses is, why is there retrogression? What is happening? Well, this isn't something new. This has happened historically. This is something that has been the bane of our existence at Avant for a couple of decades. And it is very challenging. We had severe retrogression about 15, 20 years ago in 2006. No one could come, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. And then there was forward movement with those dates. And we've always seen retrogression. With COVID, what happened is everything shut down. So the embassies were not scheduling interviews, and there was a surplus of visas available because nobody claimed them.
Got it.
And past COVID, what happened is those surplus visas were then dumped into the upcoming years. And so we saw forward movement, and we had a couple of really good years. We had several nurses going. We had hundreds of interviews scheduled, and they moved. It was just rolling. And we would have nurses filed, and within 8 to 10 months, they would be here in the US and start working. And this was for a couple of years. We saw this post-COVID. So 2021, 2022 were really good years for everyone, not just Avant. And as we got closer to 2023, we started to see the Department of State pull back on those dates because we had met those quotas of 140,000 visas annually. And so we started to see them pull back a little bit, and that's when retrogression started. And then we saw those dates move back some.
I think this is something really important for those of you watching or listening to this to understand. The story you just told, we know in talking to the nurses that we work with that, you know, they're tight-knit communities of people who have done this, other nurses who have done this, and you know, you get their stories. And so for those healthcare professionals in that time period that were like, oh yeah, I got here in 8 to 10 months, right? There's no real kind of, it's a moving target. And what I mean by that is just because one person's experience is 8 to 10 months or something like that does not necessarily mean that your experience is going to be the exact same. And I think that's again just a piece where we come in to help explain the process, right? And explain, your situation may be vastly different than even, your counterpart, to someone you work with that successfully got into the US in 8 to 10 months. Maybe they didn't have a family. Maybe they, insert many different variables.
And that's a great point, really, because it's not even from year to year.
Yeah.
We have nurses right now, and we hear this all the time. Like, my friend has this going on, but I have this going on, and why am I not moving as quickly? And there are so many other factors. Year to year, yes, there's a huge difference in how the dates work and how they move, and if they move back or forward. But even in that specific time frame, it's so fluid. So to compare your process, and this is, again, we say this, to compare your process to anyone is just, you're going to really go down a rabbit hole, and it's not general. It's very case specific. You could have family, you could have just specific delays with the USCIS or with the National Visa Center. Some cases take a little bit longer. And it's not because something's wrong with that petition. It's just the timeframes are a little bit different.
There are some things in the list of stuff that you'll have to do that are very much within your control. And I think those are the things you want to try to stay on top of, right? I think there's a lot of documentation that we'll require. And so, oftentimes, if people kind of take their time getting that to us, or, the faster and better you're able to provide us with the documentation that we need to, send forth through for immigration or whatever the case may be. We require a lot of documents. This is a very involved process. That's the piece that I think our candidates can own. Right? Of staying on top of documents, staying on top of emails, communication. These are the pieces that you own, and will work with you on all the other stuff, right? But that is something that is, I think, focusing on the things you can control, getting us the documents we ask for, staying in constant communication. Those are the really important things, right? Because the rest is kind of out of everyone's control, but we're gonna work to get this done as quickly as possible, because we've talked about some people. We want you here fast too. Trust us, right? Like this is we want to help you achieve that dream. That's very important to us. So the other thing I wanted to point out here, for someone maybe if this is your first time looking at this visa bulletin, to understand that this is not a situation where if your country's not listed, right? Because we have China, India, Mexico, Philippines. You fall into this bucket. I know you just explained that, but I just want to reiterate that, because I feel like maybe if you're looking at this for the first time, maybe you're interpreting it, which we've had people say, is like, oh, only people from China, India, Mexico, Philippines. But no, you fall into this all chargeability, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So all chargeability is everyone outside of those four. So China, India, Mexico, and the Philippines, due to the volume or the demand for the visas, have their own separate categories. And then everyone else falls in the rest of the world. So if you're from Africa or from the Caribbean or wherever else outside of those four countries, you will be under all chargeability on that visa bulletin on Chart A. And again, Chart A is what determines current movement. So that tells us who is able to come now. And then we also have Chart B, which is something we're going to get to in a couple of minutes. Yeah. But this is the current visa bulletin for August. So this will tell you, as of today in August, where you stand based on your priority date.
And there's something else on here. We see some letters. Now, on this particular, in Chart A, we see C. What does that mean?
So C is something we really like, and we haven't seen in a while. So C stands for current. which means that the dates don't apply regardless of when you were filed. You could have been filed yesterday and you just go seamlessly through the process, and as soon as you're done with the steps of immigration, so you still have to go through
Sure.
the filing and the immigration process, but as soon as you are done, you get that interview and you can come. So that's what we saw when we were post-COVID. We saw those dates go to C for everyone, which was, except for India and China, they were current, which meant we filed, we went through the process, you got your immigration paperwork in, it was submitted, and you went straight to the embassy. And the turnaround time, like I said before, was 6 to 8 months. We've had nurses come from certain countries where they didn't have a huge backlog of interviews in 4 months.
Wow.
So we filed, and within 4 or 5 months, they were here and they went to work. So
you want to see
I want to see that across the board all year round.
What we want. We would love to see it. Now, there's another letter. Now, it's not here, but I believe there is a U,
Yes.
right? There could be a U. What does that mean?
That is the opposite of C. That's what we do not want to see.
Yes, that's bad.
U is unavailable, which means that all of the numbers for that category, for that country, have been exhausted.
Oh,
so
okay.
U is something we saw back in 2006, 7, 8, I think all the way up until 2014 or 15, where there were no visas available for certain categories.
Oh.
So there's not, all of the visas have been exhausted. They've been made unavailable. So if you are in that situation because of your country or whatever petition you're filed with, then you cannot go to the embassy.
Is that a situation that's now you have to wait until October?
Potentially,
right?
It just depends. Again, it's the Department of State. We can make a guess, an educated guess on some days,
Sure.
but I don't think there's really a right or a wrong answer. It just depends on what their numbers look like, because they look at visa numbers for immigration. So these are immigrant visas that are made available across all categories, right? For all professions, for family, for people who get married, fiancés, multiple things. So there is a certain allocation for each of those categories, and it just depends on where that category is at that point in time. So there's no real way to predict it. It's just we have to wait for the next one to come out.
So that's chart A. What I want to do now is look at chart B. Now, what is chart B?
So chart B is the projected movement that is anticipated by the Department of State. So chart A is in real time, right? It's right now what we see, who can go and get those visas. Chart B is kind of an indicator which tells us where we expect this to move
So it's
forward.
kind of, like where it's going potentially.
Correct. So this is good news in terms of what we've seen with chart B. We have seen chart A go back and forth a little bit. So it went to 2022. Now currently it's at 2021. But chart B has kind of maintained where it is. So for all chargeabilities, it's at February 1st of 2023. And Philippines is a little bit behind. It's January 1st of 2023. So those dates haven't moved, which, again, this is our best guess.
Sure.
And what we expect is that we may see forward movement in the upcoming months with the new fiscal year. So October 1st, when that new allocation of visas is released, we could potentially see movement all the way up to January or February of 2023. So this gives us kind of an indication as to where we're headed.
Got it. Okay. So we hope that this was really helpful for you to at least first understanding the Visa Bulletin. Again, when you partner with Avant, we work with you to, again, continually help you to understand not only what's going on with the Visa Bulletin, but how it impacts you. Because as we stated, every single person, every single case is unique. And I think that's something really important to remember, because we have heard from so many of our successful nurses how thankful they are that we are there along the way to help guide them when we see shifts in the Visa Bulletin, when you experience life changes. And, we also have a good amount of frequently asked questions as it relates to the Visa Bulletin. So we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to hit a couple of our most frequently asked questions about the Visa Bulletin. So during this episode, you might have noticed our fancy new award. Yeah, that's right. Avant Healthcare Professionals, we recently surpassed 100,000 YouTube subscribers. It is so exciting. So if you're watching this and you've already subscribed, thanks so much. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, well, what are you waiting for? You're missing out on so much amazing content to help you become a healthcare professional in the United States. We have testimonials, we have how-tos, we have tutorials, we have webinars, we have documentaries. We even have this very podcast, Healthcare Heartbeat. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the button, and I look forward to sharing some more of our amazing video content with you. Frequently asked questions. You have asked them many times to you, members of your team, and we've put together just kind of a top 3, right? Maybe the most common questions that you receive. So the first one we discussed that you hear a lot is, what happens when my priority date becomes current? What does that mean when they look at the visa bulletin and, oh, it's current? What does that mean?
So with priority dates moving forward, when your date is current, what that means is that you can then go to the interview, get your visa, and come. So that's just what it generally means. We move your process along as quickly as possible. So for Avant, our goal is to get you as far as possible and as close as we can to that embassy interview. So you go through the USCIS, which is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, that process. Then you go to the National Visa Center, which is the second phase of the process. And once those 2 are done, you sit at what we call final processing, which is where your case is documentarily complete.
Okay.
All documents have been received by the government, and you're just waiting for those dates to move forward.
Kind of like a virtual waiting room.
Correct.
Okay.
And then at the point that those dates are current, that's when the embassy schedules your interview. You get a date, typically about 30 to 60 days out from when it's scheduled. That allows you time to complete other requirements. So you will have to do medical exams and gather additional documents. We will send you information and documents that you need for that interview because it's an employment-based visa that you're getting. And then you attend the interview, you get your visa, and then you come to the US.
Okay. All right. So that's a good thing. Okay. Now, on the flip side, dates, move backwards. What does that mean? What is that called? How does that impact healthcare professionals looking to get to the U.S.?
So that's retrogression. Like we've talked about, that's something we've seen. It's cyclical. So when we have the new fiscal year, October 1st, those dates tend to progress forward with the new allocation of visas. As we get closer to or into the next year and closer to those dates where we are right now, so we're closer to the end of the last fiscal year, we might see those dates go back, and that's retrogression. So if it does go back, like it's nothing to worry. It's something we've seen. We've done this before. It's a cycle. We just wait for the new allocation and then for forward movement. But there's plenty that you can do during that time.
Yeah, we've been doing this for over 20 years. We're no stranger to retrogression. We can appreciate that it, as someone going through the process, this may be your first time seeing it, not our first time seeing it, right? And to your point, there's a lot that you can do to get to that virtual waiting room, right? There's a lot.
So if it's not moving, again, it's something cyclical, right? So we anticipate that it will move forward in the coming months. And in the interim, what you can do is complete all the other requirements. So you can work on your English exam if you haven't already done that. You can work on your visa screen, which is your healthcare worker certificate. Continue to work because that's important. It is very important to continue to work in a clinically approved setting so that at the time that you are able to come, we can find you appropriate placement in the US because that is a requirement of our program. Continue to secure documents. If you have any changes with your family or if you have job changes, let us know. A question that we get all the time is, what happens if I get married? Or what happens if I plan to have children? And nothing really is detrimental to your process. Just let us know you are eligible to include those dependents on the case and they can come with you. Just keep us informed. If you plan to change jobs, again, let us know so we can let you know if that fits what the needs are in the US. So you could go and work in a position somewhere where it's locally acceptable and that's good for you professionally or financially, but that could impact your process, that it could be detrimental to your process in the US for you to find employment here.
Yeah, I think one thing I really want you to take away from this is that, we're a team, and it's really critical throughout this process. We spend a lot of time together, and one of the most critical aspects of any team is communication. So when things change, if there are updates, things like that, be sharing them with Avant so then we can, share with you, how do we proceed? What does it look like? What's needed? What do we need to do? What's the impact of said decisions or life updates, right? I think that's just a really critical thing. I hope this episode has helped you better understand the Visa Bulletin. If you are in this process, if you are a nurse that is looking to get to the US and work, I highly encourage you, wherever you are listening or watching this, to subscribe, to go back and check out some of our previous content we've created. All this content we create is designed to help you in your journey to become a nurse and fulfilling your American dream. So, Saloni, thanks so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. This has been Healthcare Heartbeat by Avant Healthcare Professionals, the leader in international healthcare staffing and recruitment, where we change the lives of healthcare professionals every day. To learn more about how our healthcare professionals can help your facility, visit AvantHealthcare.com and be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts.